Thank you so much, Jordana. I'm thrilled to be here today and to moderate our conversation on fashion is experiential learning. I am standing virtually in Maxwell Hall at our campus on 45th Street. And I'm thrilled to talk with you today along with Robert, Harry, Jordana, and Heather. At LIM, we believe experiential learning is live, immersive, and social. All of our students go through a series of internship experiences throughout their entire journey with us, from freshmen, kind of their first experience into the working world, through to a senior co-op experience. Almost 2,000 years ago, Aristotle wrote, "For the things we have to learn before we can do them, we learn by doing them." Learning is a powerful tool that can promote and increase our sense of motivation, curiosity, creativity, and also a sense of wonderment. To start off our panel, I'm going to start with you, Harry. And from your perspective, how do you believe that augmented reality, virtual reality, and artificial intelligence may be used to help shape the business and the future of fashion?
Thanks. I think there's a couple of things with regards to those things that you just mentioned. Specifically, if we want to talk about sort of the consumer side first, I think for consumers, I think we'll all approach retail with a different way, right? Where we might have had no concerns about trying on clothes in the past, now we might be a little bit more concerned. Where we had no concerns about sitting on furniture to test a chair and see if we liked it for our home, now we might have concern. So I think from a consumer end use, there might be the opportunity to start to sort of see, and we've seen this already with some brands, but it may be even pushed even further, see what things might look on you rather than having to put them on, having to try them on. So that sort of helps both sides. It really helps the consumer. It also helps the store not necessarily have to manage back to it. Perhaps even more importantly, I think it also helps wholesale with the showroom experience. So showrooms can now go all across the world without ever leaving one sort of geographic location. So I think if you think about virtual reality, now we can actually give you a tour of a space and you don't even have to visit the space, and you don't even have to be in the same room as the person that's giving the tour. We did a test at Vera Bradley, not a test actually, when we launched our home stores, our home business about 4 years ago. We didn't have the space in our retail stores to actually put beds and display, soft homes. So we did that all through virtual reality. Even 4 years ago, we got great response back. We had consumers that we were anticipating about a minute to a minute and a half that they would spend touring the space, and they were spending north of 4 minutes. And that was before any of us were even comfortable with this web life that we're living right now. So I think that's part of it. And the other piece is for students of tomorrow. Students are in schools now and they're thinking about space planning and they're learning how to do visual merchandising. All of that is very translatable to a virtual environment. And it may not be something that they ever thought about. Certainly nothing I thought about when I started my career, more than 25 years ago, that I would ever be designing a virtual space. But it obviously gives you a lot more flexibility. It's a lot more cost sensitive, if you will, and perhaps even a lot more globally sensitive because of the low carbon impact. So I think the whole virtual experience is going to drastically change what retail looks like. Those best retailers out there are already starting to adopt it, starting to look at it. And I think it doesn't, however, replace the physical space. I was on a conference last week and I heard something like 80% of Gen Z still want to be in a tactile space because they want to walk away from social media. It's not about replacing that. It's about complementing that and thinking differently. Sales per square foot may not be as important tomorrow. It may be more about how long is the customer engaged and how are we using the physical space differently to sell different parts of our business versus just the product.
That's really fascinating. I really appreciate your insights, Harry. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Sure.
Jordana, one of the things we always talk about is the power of continuous learning as a tool for motivating personal career success. From your perspective, how do you believe that experiential learning can help people reimagine and rebuild a successful career in the business of fashion?
I think, well, I take myself, for example, I started, what is it now? 17 years ago. And I'm a different case than most. I did not go to college and I went straight into experiential learning, just going after who I wanted to work for on my own. And my first job that I was offered was a PR director position in the fashion world for Nina Ricci, Porsche Design, Lanvin. This was back 17 years ago. And the person that hired me said, I'm just going to throw you right in and you're going to learn it on your own as you go. And if you can figure it out, I'm not going to pay you, but 3 months later, we'll see how you're doing. And I literally just used Google and books and asking colleagues and just really being thrown into it. And after 3 months, they saw that I was able to do the job well and they offered me the position. They decided to start a company, but that goes to that. So I really am a big believer just because of how I started in the industry and where I am today. And also how experiential learning through being thrown into situations that are more than just making a copy of something or getting a coffee for someone, you're able to not only learn what you're there to do, but you're also able to see every facet of business if they really allow you to come into it with full transparency. And that can take you into so many different angles and directions because the fashion industry is so vast and the supply chain has so many components to it that I really am a huge believer in just throwing people in and allowing them to kind of explore and learn, just as if though they, ran the company themselves.
Thank you so much. And thank you so much also for the support that you give to our students.
Oh my gosh. So I have to say, Lim College, most of our interns are from there and they are incredible. And we take them to every meeting with us, whether it's the CEO of a company to whoever, it doesn't matter. They come with us. And I think because of that, they're really like taking risks and coming to us with ideas. And even if we do something and they don't like it, they tell us. And I'm grateful for that because a lot of times they have a thing that they think of that we don't. And I'm a big believer that we all have great ideas no matter what position you hold in the company. So I'm super grateful for Lynn College for that.
Oh, thank you very, very much.
Yeah, of course.
Robert, building on Jordana, how do you believe that experiential learning can kind of help support career development and then ultimately kind of a sense of employability for a new graduate?
What I would say is that the buzzword in fashion now is evolution, transformation, innovation. There are new models. It's a new world. I believe that the learning curve is greater than it ever has been, not just for the entry-level employee, but for even the supervisors and the leaders. Thus, I look at the advantage and disadvantage of having a traditional education versus a career-focused education. And I see the person with that career education being a deer in the headlights, walking into a company, versus the student whose education has been focused on internships, courses, coursework that goes with those internships, and seminars, events, mentoring programs. And I believe the advantage is a world apart. I use the interns that I've had at LIM as an example. I use my current mentee because I'm part of the mentoring program as an example. What I think that advantage is being able to navigate a work environment, understanding the discipline of the work environment, the soft skills, which are deemed more important than technical skills by a vast majority of employers at this thing, but presence, confidence, interpersonal skills. To get a little more specific, I think that student, when they enter the job market, understands presentation skills. I think they understand deadlines. They understand deliverables. They understand team working on projects, hierarchies, reporting. I could go on and on. They also have a sense of role models. They've followed role models in their internships. They know who they should be and who they shouldn't be. I just think it's a supreme advantage over traditional education.
I really appreciate that. And I love what you were talking about the role models. Could you tell me a little bit more about what you're thinking about?
I'm especially excited about a new program. It's called LIM 2020. And it's something innovative, something to cope with the unfortunate current environment. And yes, there will be internships, but in addition to that, LIM, I know, is working on a program. I hope to be involved with it. And it's career development workshops. It's made up of career coaching. It's made up of finding connections, industry connections. And what I would ask as many of the viewers as can to support it. We do need people to be mentors. We do need people to support our students before they go into the workforce. And most important, we need role models for the students who will become our next fashion leaders. So again, Nina is the point person for the program, and we do need industry support. So please join us.
Well, thank you, Robert, for giving the plug on our program. I really appreciate it. If anyone is interested who's listening, we'd love to involve you in our program. And please reach out to us at careers@limcollege.edu. We'd absolutely love to, involve you in our program. So I'm going to shift a little bit away from the people aspect of learning to the brand aspect. And one of the most powerful things about learning is its incredible, ability to promote creativity. Heather, would you like to tell us a little bit about how learning and creativity can really help a brand kind of adapt and evolve?
Sure. Thanks, Nina. So, right now, I think we're in a marketing environment where brands are really being asked to, navigate something they don't have a playbook for. They're really, really under pressure. Many brands, I think, Harry gave a couple of good examples. They're leaning into digital channels or test and learn programs or innovation in a way and in a scale and speed that they never really have before. And I think some organizations are, really primed to be able to do that. And, really where many brands might find success now is if you're able to take some of those learnings, adapt and move forward. So, take a test and learn approach sort of on steroids and say, okay, we're going to plan to try something. How will we measure it quickly? How can we be nimble? And if it works, either proceed or pivot on, to the next thing. I really do believe that the, current environment, and again, that heavy lean into digital and innovation and again, test and learn really out of need, not actually going to change anytime soon. And, talent that can come in and bring creative perspectives, fresh perspectives. And I think, again, that openness and willingness to try things and be nimble, organizations will be looking for that kind of quality. And I think brands have realized that, the faster they can move, oftentimes as an innovator, I've experienced, it's really difficult to turn a ship, especially if it's a really established organization. But, in this moment, speed matters. And, I think that doesn't mean not being thoughtful or creative, but it really lays the groundwork for, brands to take their learnings and implement them in a way.
Thank you so much for your insights. Collectively, what would be some advice that you might offer up a young graduate who's entering kind of, the working world during this time? What would you recommend, Harry?
I would say first, don't be scared to start at the bottom. The best leaders have worked at all levels. And so I think first and foremost, don't expect that you're going to come in and run the company on day one. There are certainly those diamonds that are out there, but that's definitely more the exception than the norm. So I think looking for opportunities to do something that is sort of entry level should be embraced. And I think also one of the other things that I talk about a lot when I'm talking about building teams is look for a place where your strengths fit a hole that they have. Don't assume that you can walk in and necessarily need to be a generalist. There are places out there that need your strengths. Don't worry about your opportunities. You can keep building on those, but celebrate your strengths, sell your strengths.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Jordana?
I'm going to go the opposite realm, and I'm going to say for graduates, right now is a really good time for reflection, to be innovative, and to maybe think of ideas that are not currently out in the market or being offered. I think right now is a really great opportunity, and we've heard from a few speakers the last day and a half, to really have that emerging market make a stand and have a voice, because people are listening now. People have the time to listen. So I think if you are a graduate and you have an idea and you want to go into entrepreneurship, it might actually be a good time for that. And everything happens slowly. You're not going to become a huge success overnight. But if you work on your craft and you use this time to really process what you want to do, I think that there could be some room for a lot of potential there.
Yeah, I think that's really great advice. Thank you so much, Jordana. Robert, what would you like to add?
Mine is kind of simplistic because I married to my own career. I even married to my son's career, who is in fashion as well. It's about personal sacrifice, dedication, and unending focus.
I think that's really great. I love the simplicity of that. Heather, what would be some advice that you might offer to a young graduate?
I think, don't be afraid to take risks right now and to bring your creative ideas to organizations, because now more than ever, fresh thinking is really important. So don't be afraid to speak up and share your ideas, and, especially things that, are new ideas. And, I think to Jordana's point, entrepreneurship is really interesting. You can also be an entrepreneur in your organization and help them move forward.
What do you think is going to be the #1 most important thing for people to learn in the coming months?
I would say to learn is sort of how people react when they're not able to be right next to you, sort of how to work differently, distantly and differently, and still maintain that social interaction while at a distance.
I love that. It's amazing how some of the video conversations have almost been more kind of like meaningful than our old-fashioned telephone conversations during this time of social distancing. Robert, would you like to add anything?
Kind of to agree with Harry, flexibility to new rules and new models.
Flexibility.
Be open to plan B.
Yeah, Jordana?
I think for me, transparency. I think that's the more transparent you can be. It's okay now to not be perfect or be thought of as perfect. I think the transparency behind the imperfections and the vulnerability for the first time, and I think it's going to stay that way, is something that's really going to be really good for everybody.
I agree. Heather?
I second Jordana. I actually just posted on Instagram the kind of Zoom versus reality setup that I have going on. And I think, it's really relevant, and it's at every level, whether you're talking about brand marketing, which is my field, or anything else. I think people really value that authenticity and transparency right now. And I think that'll be a really big takeaway that my hope is it continues.
I agree. I think a whole resurgence of authenticity from, human to brand to business. What are some questions from the participants for us?
I'm gonna request it. Martha, she's hearing us, so it's like I'm talking to someone who's not here. Can you send over some questions, please? She should type it in.
When you're looking at a resume, how would you look at kind of that ability to problem solve? And within that problem solving kind of mindset, the ability to be nimble and to be authentic and transparent?
I would say looking at a resume is probably a tough one to sort of figure out problem solving. Generally, when I'm looking at resumes, I'm kind of more looking to see how broad the experience is and how much time they're spending in a place. And I think that when people are jumping for jobs, I get the sense that either A, they don't know exactly what they want and haven't found it yet, or B, they've had some companies that have really had some serious problems. So I think problem solving is something more that I'm looking for when I'm having conversations versus I'm necessarily finding on a resume.
Okay, that's very, very helpful. Heather, I see you nodding your head.
Yeah, I agree. But I think, you know, from a resume perspective, really difficult, but problem solving is a really important skill. I think the more solution oriented you are in the way that you approach things, and sometimes that can also be a skill that you develop as sort of a detective within your company to say, well, I'm seeing this opportunity to transform a process or create a new tool or simplify something. So, you know, that sort of problem solution outlook, I think is critical. And I think it will continue to be critical, especially now.
Okay.
I have some questions. Sorry.
Go ahead, Jordana.
Questions that popped in. Should I read them out to you guys? Because I have them here.
I see that now. Yeah.
Okay.
So how do we think, as a panel, think that education will change as a result of COVID? How will education and learning change as a result of COVID?
I think it will be more online. And the same way as they say that retail will change and that people are getting used to more at-home activities, or they say that entertainment will change, theaters will change as people are getting used to new models, new ways of doing things. I guess that's an obvious one, that there will be more people remotely getting their education.
Okay, Harry, I see you're nodding your head.
Yeah, I would agree. I would agree with that. I think what it's going to do is it's actually going to break down more barriers and allow more people access to things that they might not have previously had access to. I mean, I was on a call with some educators last week talking about students, and they were saying, you know, they've got students that might have been international students that now maybe they don't have to spend the money to necessarily travel somewhere internationally to get that same type of education. So I think that the idea that barriers will be even more broken down is a good one. And perhaps if you can find a silver lining to what we're all dealing with, perhaps that's one of the silver linings, is that it's making us all more accessible around the world. And this is a perfect example of what we're doing today. You know, if you could imagine just getting us all together today would have been a lot more challenging than it is. So I think things like this are a great example of sort of how education is going to change and how the world as a whole is going to change.
Great way of looking at it.
I really like that word accessibility. One of the questions that's come up in the chat box is, you know, with a lot of internships being suspended, you know, what's a great tool to actually go and try and find a new internship or a job opportunity? And I think accessibility is interesting in terms of like building connections. How would you recommend to, you know, a young graduate that they, you know, from home kind of like build connections? Heather?
You know, I think some of the same ways that you would approach it, you know, out there in the world still apply here. Participating in events like this, having something to say about what's going on, you know, being a publisher of your own thoughts and, you know, building networks that way, I think is still really relevant. And I think ultimately too, you know, you can do that now, and then those connections will still be there when people start going back to work and things start to come back in a different way. So I would stay engaged and keep learning and start to talk about what you're seeing.
Okay. Jordana, would you like to build? Oh, Robert, go ahead.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry.
Sorry, go ahead.
I think I'm finding personally, I think it's a time that people are most receptive to being in touch with people. And I think it's a perfect time for a student to be reaching out to any contacts that they have, to start with wishing people well, and then to follow up at a later date because they've planted the seed, and it makes it easier to follow up and leverage a contact.
Yeah.
So I think it's a perfect time for networking.
I think I would add just one thing about that. I think the other thing that this has all allowed us to do, I mean, look, the fact I'm in a guest bedroom, right? It allows authenticity to come much more to the forefront. So this idea that we were all sort of living with or suffering through, however you want to look at it, the influencer world, the influencer world literally changed overnight. And nobody's looking to influencers the way that they were even a month ago. So it's allowed for people to be very authentic, very in their real element. And now everything is much more acceptable. So you don't have to have your hair done. You don't have to have makeup on. You could have sweatpants on instead of a suit. But I think celebrating that and celebrating your authenticity now is the time to do it. To Robert's point, like you can do things that you couldn't have gotten away with,
Right.
6 weeks ago, 8 weeks ago. Do it. And the influencer world, I think, is radically changed, if not over, which is kind of painful for all those people that were sort of making a living off of influencer life. But now it's time for reinvention. So
I think so. Everything they said, I agree with everything. And I think even with proof with this, what we put together, we put this entire 2-day conference together in 3 weeks. And a lot of the speakers, when it comes to the Kenneth Cole and Diane von Furstenberg and so many others, it have been through cold emails to them, just with what we wanted to do. And I think if you're genuine about the message that you want to portray or about the job that you want to do, and if they really see passion behind it, people are really receptive to receiving these messages. They'll respond. You just can't be afraid. And like to Harry's point about social media and influencers, I think it might not necessarily be that influencers are no longer going to be there, but the type of influencing that people are looking for is different. And so I think it has so much potential for people to go in that space and be able to really give the messaging out that people are looking to receive and be that new influencer. And so I agree with I think everybody said it perfectly.
How much of education in the business of fashion should be focused on sustainability? Okay.
I think at a minimum 50%. And I think sustainability has so many different forms, but at a minimum 50%. And I think the idea that the world is so much more connected now is going to also force that. I think it's going to happen by default now.
Yeah, I think that if you saw Women's Wear Daily today, in the middle of the world being upside down, Nordstrom made their commitment to sustainability for the future. And I think that message really says it all. It's here to stay. And to Harry's point, it should be significant focus.
Heather, go ahead.
I'm just going to say that I agree with both of what you guys just said. And I also think that sustainability, what Harry mentioned about it coming in different facets, I think that's something important to remember, because I think a lot of times people have the idea that a company can just be fully sustainable like that, and it's so much more, especially when it's a big company. So I think any incremental change towards sustainability that anybody does should be applauded and not looked down at, because they're saying, why aren't you fully sustainable, which I think happens a lot. Yeah. So I think sustainability is here to stay, and people should definitely make us, regardless of how they adapt it, I think it should be adapted to the business model.
So building on that, Heather, how would you answer the question in terms of how much of an education should be focused on digital and technology?
My answer is 100%. But, I think in reality, I studied digital when I was in graduate school. So when I was getting my MBA, before it was even called digital. And, it hasn't evolved all that much since then, which is a little bit surprising. So I think, to me, digital should be woven within classical marketing. It should be woven within, media and communication strategy. The ideal is, to obviously have some specialist education around it, but I think also just weaving it into all of the things that we study in the normal course of, business or fashion. It really has to be integrated into curriculum, I think, at a macro level also. So without giving you that 100% answer, I think quite a lot, and certainly augmenting some of those traditional methods of teaching marketing with some specialized digital curriculum, whether that be e-commerce, whether it be digital strategy, digital media. All of those things are really, I think, again, we're leaning into them more and more, and that exposes some of the need for talent. So, it's the perfect time.
That's excellent. One of the ways, at LIM, certainly in higher ed generally, has been kind of a incorporation of blending synchronous and asynchronous virtual learning. In terms of like how like our ways of kind of like working or learning have changed. One of the questions that's come in is, besides actually going virtual, how has COVID-19 changed the business for each of you? So how has your business changed besides going virtual?
I think if you want to think about retail stores specifically, I think just the way that we're approaching selling, because our selling model was very interactive, we're thinking differently about how you can sort of sell from 6 feet away now. And if you know the Vera Bradley product, it's filled with features and benefits, many of which you can't see until you open up a bag or open up a suitcase. So this idea that we need to now sell those same features and benefits from a distance is going to force change, but I think that will be embraced. I think the good news is that we're not trying to sell this 6 feet away, selling to somebody that doesn't understand, or a recipient that doesn't understand why we're doing it. So it's not like we have to change our selling model and have to explain why we're changing our selling model, which makes it easier. So I think that's part of it. And the other piece that I would add is sort of, this is something that we're seeing, and we don't even have stores open right now. Our website is open, but our stores are not. The idea of mobile wallet, I think, is going to be a big one. The challenge is, I was at a market recently and I used mobile wallet, but then I still had to touch the keypad. I think that defeats the whole purpose of mobile wallet. I think those pieces of technology are going to be forced to kind of adapt more quickly. I think we will ultimately get to a cashless society at some point. I mean, I think we've all known cash is filthy for a long time, and now we probably embrace the fact that cash is filthy in an even greater way. So sort of twofold, but from a back of house, I think it's more about just kind of how we work with employees, how we interact differently. It allows us to interact more quickly, but that personal interaction, that hallway conversation can't happen as easily. And there's, I think, a lot of business that happens in the hallway that now doesn't get done, that we've got to learn how to get past.
Yeah, that's a really great answer.
Nina, what I think is the people that I'm working with right now, that I'm consulting with, they're really just, I think the big change is people are resetting the whole logistics of their business. I think they're resetting seasonalities, resetting the way they're going to present, resetting their inventory models going forward, the whole seasonality thing, ready for market. I think people are going to totally revamp the logistics of how they're running their business or how they did in the past. It's a reset for me.
It's a reset. Okay. Heather, would you like to build on to that?
Sure. I think, taking it from a really commercial perspective, who are your big partners? Where is your product available? Is it visible? Making sure that some of those basic things in the e-commerce channel are really, really buttoned up. And I think also, zero basing sales projections and rebalancing for different channels, and that's, I think, a necessity at this point. And, a lot of brands are very active, whether it be their own e-commerce or retailer.com. But I think at this moment in time, that is the channel. And so just rebalancing, setting your expectations and your goals, but then also, finding ways to ensure that you are visible on that channel, you look good as a brand or product. Those have taken on such new importance at this moment.
What's going to be some of the best kind of resources and or tools for students or anyone for that matter to learn or to leverage with the changing kind of business models?
I would say, I'll jump in. I would say first and foremost is the digital skills that they've probably spent the last 4 years working on are going to come into play in a big way. There are certainly those of us that have been in the industry that know digital, but probably not to the same degree that a lot of students do. Sorry, my dog's popping in. She might have a point of view. So that's one of them. I think the second thing is this idea of interacting with people and making a web conversation personal versus being sort of, I think all of us approached web conversations sort of with a different, distant way previously, and now we're kind of forced to be kind of interacting in a much more personal way digitally than we were before.
Heather?
Sorry, I got distracted by the dog.
Anyways, in terms of kind of like some resources or skills, kind of like in like learning some of the new like business models.
Yeah, and I think, again, some of those skill sets of, really understanding digital advertising, the digital ecosystem, understanding Amazon as a platform, those are skills that are really, really valuable to organizations, whether they be manufacturers or retailers alike. So understanding how to navigate the space, getting, there's a lot of certifications that you can get with different publishers, just in terms of, Google search certification, things like that. Honing in on those skills, but then, maybe taking this time to learn a little bit more. Those are real skills that people are looking for at this moment.
And what about for like the entrepreneur or the small business owner? Are there models that you're seeing that don't necessarily rely on like a mass scaling? Like in terms of like a changing business model with our current world?
Yeah, I mean, I would say like for small business owners, local businesses, I think the idea that they can now, if you think about like what restaurants have done with this whole kind of takeout delivery thing, that same model can very easily apply to local small business. It's just a different way of thinking, and actually perhaps it allows for, we were talking about entrepreneurship earlier, it perhaps allows for even more entrepreneurship, because now you can in effect take what might have been your Etsy site and turn it into a pseudo bricks and mortar space that might just live out of your garage. Now people can just drive by your house and do pickup, so they can sort of do buy online, pickup in my driveway instead of in my store.
Jordana, what about you?
I think I could speak. I am a young small business, a startup actually. We've only been doing this for 2 years. And obviously we were live events, which no longer. And so now doing this, for example, is something that even if things do go back to the normal, I think that we're going to keep this online worldwide summit as a constant ongoing thing in our business model, because it makes sense. And we can, maintain being a small business until we're able to grow, because right now, obviously there's certain difficulties and challenges there. But still, I think creating community and keeping relevance through pivoting to online with event companies is something that would be it's a really smart thing, because we've seen it firsthand, just how much, it's been incredible, the things that have happened with this in just a day and some hours. So I think that's proof of that.
Okay. Robert, one of the questions that's come in is kind of, what are some of the challenges that you find kind of like in the college to career transition as it relates to experiential learning and internships?
Well, if you look at most, in many places, college seniors, it's a time where they go to school a few days a week, a few hours a day. It's usually very often a different grind. And even if it's regular grind, it's not the same as being up at 7 a.m. to be in the office, or having to work till 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock at night straight through. And a lot of it is an adjustment. And again, it comes back to what I said about experiential learning. Having been in a work environment, knowing the disciplines, seeing what other people have to do, seeing what the realities of the work environment is an incredible tool. I would say just the adjustment to the real world, in my experience, is probably the biggest challenge, because we hire people with full internship experience. So we don't have to go through the thing that they don't know how to use. They don't know how to handle reports. They understand the work environment. So the biggest is just youth and that adjustment to what the real world is.
Okay. Heather, would you like to build on that, or some kind of add your perspective on kind of like the blending of like university college-based internships and then like the real business world?
I think, it's to Robert's point, getting exposure to the real world dynamics is more important than ever. So, I'm a firm believer in experiences where you learn so much. The classroom is a really nice base, but being in an environment, being in a workplace, getting that on the job experience is where I personally have gleaned, the most insight and the most experience. So, continuing to make sure that that's part of your blend, that, don't rely on the classroom as, your only reference point before graduation, I think is really important. So I completely agree.
Harry, one of the questions that we have kind of expanding on this conversation is, what's the value of doing a community service-based internship?
Yeah, I am a huge proponent of community service-based internships. And I think that, there's a lot, I think BlackRock it was that came out this year and said that if companies are not, connecting with their communities, whether philanthropically or otherwise, they're going to no longer buy into the company. So I think community service is highly important. And all of us are, in places in our careers right now that we're giving back, but that giving back should really have started long before your career started, so that it should be naturally part of you. If you think about sustainability, and there are a myriad of different types of sustainability. One of the organizations that I'm involved with is one that supports students and educators that are focused on retail design, hospitality design. In essence, that is sustainability, because I'm helping sustain the industry. But hopefully I'm also teaching those students the importance of when they are, in their career further along, that they are giving back too. So I think community service as part of internship is highly valuable. And to Heather's point, certainly that real world experience that you're getting, it'd be great if you could find a company that you can get that real world experience that has some connection back. And I think that's pretty common today. Most any company that's out there today has some sort of a give back, a community connection. Whether it be medical or otherwise, and perhaps that's even going to be stronger now coming out of this, and the fact that we all give back. But I think absolutely highly valuable.
I just want to say something really quick, because I love what you just said, Harry. And today we had Roberta Anand at a previous panel, the founder of the African Fashion Foundation. And she said that she recently heard a quote that says, I have it written down because I loved it, but giving back will be the new luxury. And honestly, I'm a true believer. Giving back has always been a huge part of everything that I do. And I think, to Harry's point, it's extremely important to get people be able to get the work experience, the workforce experience, but also the giving back aspect for sure. So that was great what you said.
What are some opportunities that you would recommend that students seek out for finding a community service type internship?
Yeah, I would say first and foremost, find something that's close to their hearts. I chose education because I come from a family of educators with a grandfather thrown in that had a dry goods store in the 30s and 40s, but education was always important to me. And so naturally it made sense for me to align myself with that. Vera Bradley, we have a breast cancer foundation that was established because our first salesperson, who was the college roommate of one of our co-founders, died of breast cancer at 51. And so the co-founders made the decision to do something to combat it. I think find something that is close to your heart. So again, we talked about authenticity. That's where the value is. And I would assure you that as students grow in their careers, certainly the successful ones are going to have a lot of opportunities, a lot of people coming at them for their support. Find the one that is the closest to you, because then you will certainly give them the most and your heart will be in it for the right reasons. You're not doing it because you have to, you're doing it because you want to.
Right. You can, anybody can call any of the large charity organizations that support, that grant money to various causes, and find the cause there that you're the most interested in. And that speaks to your heart, as Harry said. When I see it on a resume, I read it as a quality person. I like to see on a resume the real world business experience, but when I see the give back experience, people who fed the poor or people who went on charity missions, I see it as a quality person and probably the kind of person that we would want in an organization.
Heather, what about doing like digital, like community service internships? What were your perspective on the opportunities within that?
Yeah, I think, oftentimes there are definitely opportunities to contribute a skill set in addition to energy and your hands. And so I would say absolutely go after that. But, I think to both Harry and Robert's point, find something that really pulls you in first. I'm a big proponent of local. And by local, I mean within the, 10 blocks surrounding my apartment building. And find something that you can really contribute to the community around you, and maybe they need help with different skill sets, or creating a newsletter for them, or managing their website. Things like that are absolutely skills that could be valuable, in addition to just you bringing your energy and enthusiasm.
And I just want to quickly, I know I keep bringing this in with, doing your own thing, but I think also there's a lot of things that are happening with different organizations for cancer and homelessness and whatever it is that you support. But I think maybe sometimes if it's something that you're really passionate about, you're seeing something that's being missed or something that they still need to implement. And so I think that this is also such a good time to be that person that creates whatever that is and brings it forward to that organization. I think that if you really are passionate about it, it's something that you will do regardless of what it is. So yeah, so I just wanted to throw that out there.
I love that. I think so, holistically throughout our conversation, we've been talking about how learning is fashion, but it's also digital. It's also curiosity, creativity, it's innovation, it's authenticity. And most of all, what I'm hearing is that it's heart. And I really want to thank you, Jordana, for hosting us today.
Guys, this is such a fun and great conversation. Like, I could speak with you guys all day. I learned so much because I feel like, you all come from different backgrounds, and it's things that I don't necessarily, there's so much that that I don't know, all of you. And so I'm really thankful for this because it's opened up my mind to so much more. So thank you all so much. And thank you, Lim College, for being a partner in this with us. We really couldn't have done it without you. It's all collaborative. It's a team effort. So thank you all.
Thank you so much for hosting us.